30 seconds.
Yes, thank you very much, Lasca and Corliss. So, Minister, this question relates to the Irish League of Credit Unions and putting in place a mechanism that would enable funds held by the League of Credit Unions to be put to good use in respect of the development of social housing through approved housing bodies. So, if you could provide an update to the House on that.
So this is a question, Deputy. Thank you that has been asked of me, and I've answered on a number of occasions, but I'm happy to do so again here. The last time I dealt with this matter was last October, and my colleague, Minister English, also answered this question at oral PQs a few weeks ago. Each time it's been clearly stated that the Government is not and has never been committed to establishing a special purpose vehicle on behalf of the organisation mentioned by the Deputy. There's been a lot of engagement between my own department and the Department of Housing with this organisation since 2015. Following analysis of their two proposals and meetings with the organisation in question, both departments stated in writing that the second of the proposed models, which was the establishment of an SPV by the credit unions, was the most suitable. In July, Rebuilding Ireland separately committed to establishing an innovation fund to support the development of innovative financial models. It's been repeatedly clarified, both in writing and indeed in answers to parliamentary questions, that this commitment was not to establish a state-owned SPV, rather to provide funding to help develop a sector-led approved housing body SPV in relation to supporting credit unions in the provision of funding for social housing. The role of the Government and the Central Bank is to ensure there is an appropriate legislative and regulatory framework. In this regard, the Central Bank has now revised the credit union investment regulations to enable credit unions to invest in social housing via an SPV.
McGrath,
yeah, Minister, thank you for your reply. And I think, in summary, you're saying that this is not an issue for your department or the Department of Housing, that there is no ongoing body of work in this space being undertaken. My understanding of what Minister of State English said was that by the end of Q1 of this year, that work would be completed to facilitate the SPV that we have spoken about. Yes, the SPV would be developed by, as I understand it, the Irish Council for Social Housing, and the objective is to facilitate the use of funding for the development of social housing by approved housing bodies. But the departments do have a role in facilitating that. So he certainly was giving a commitment that work would be done in Q1 of 2019. So if you can clarify that matter, and also will the SPV, if and when it is established, in your view, meet the regulatory requirements of the Central Bank of Ireland in respect of credit unions?
Minister.
Well, so in relation to your second question, Deputy, it will have to meet the regulatory requirements of the Central Bank in relation to the operation of credit unions, so it will have to do that. In relation to the work that the Deputy touched on there from Minister English, maybe it's the case that Minister English there was referring to specific areas of housing policy, but I will have to check that. But certainly from our point of view, we now believe there are no barriers remaining to the set-up of this fund. The responsibility and I think initiative now needs to come from elements in the credit union movement to see if they actually want to go ahead and do it, which I believe they do. And just for the Deputy's interest, on Tuesday afternoon I met all of the credit unions in the Department of Finance and had what I think they felt to be a productive meeting on a lot of different issues and matters. I meet them collectively in the department on a relatively frequent basis, and I would be hoping to meet them again in that format where we had all unions and all representative bodies together.
Deputy Murphy has a short supplementary.
I'll be very brief because I want to give Deputy McGrath the opportunity to finalise his comments. But I would say, Minister, that this is really important, and our credit unions, have a track record up and down the country in relation to supporting communities. And it is vital that, as quickly as possible, that we would ensure that this particular process that has been gone through would come to a conclusion. And judging by your comments, would you be able to put a time span on it as to when we would be able to get this up and running so that credit unions could have the money made available to support housing?
We'll combine.
Yeah, thank you, Asking Corley. So, Minister, just to be clear, I think what you're saying is that there isn't any ongoing work within your department or in the Department of Housing that you're aware of which forms part of this objective of developing an SPV. As far as you're concerned, the framework is there for the credit union movement to proceed and go ahead and do this. I think that is what I'm hearing from you. So, I would imagine that this issue was discussed during your meeting on Tuesday. If you can clarify whether or not this issue was discussed at that point, and perhaps if you could go back and ask your officials to look at what commitments Minister of State English has given that would be completed in Q1 of 2019 and revert to us on that.
Deputy. So in relation to Deputy Murphy's question, I can't ensure this will happen, because if part of our economy, or part of a financial, our credit union or our banking sector, if they decide they want to participate in this, we can only do so much. And to deal with Deputy McGrath's question to me, from the point of view of the Department of Finance, we now believe that we have done all we can to facilitate the set-up of such an entity. And it now rests with those who have been calling for this entity to see if they want to go ahead and do it. Was it raised with me on the meeting on Tuesday? No, it wasn't raised with me. It was not brought up with me, Deputy. In relation to the point there about Deputy Minister English, maybe I can explain what that deadline was. My understanding is that the Department of Housing have now provided funding to the Irish Council of Social Housing to help see if they can develop the framework that you are referring to. And the Irish Council of Social Housing are now aiming to complete that project by the first quarter. So maybe what the Deputy is referring to is the work that the Irish Council of Social Housing are doing, rather than necessarily the Department of Housing or my own department. But to reiterate to both deputies, we now believe that we have done all we can. The matter didn't come up again there on Tuesday, and if there is an opportunity to be grasped there, and there may well be there, Deputy Murphy, it now does rest on those who have identified to see if they can do it.